What if it is permissible to want to leave a legacy? I'd like to welcome Deborah Erickson to the Design Your Legacy podcast this lovely Friday. Welcome, Deborah.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure to host you. And would you share with the audience where you are joining today from?
Yes, I live in Portland, Oregon.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Okay, well, if you would like to share any type of icebreaker before we jump into the first question, please feel free to do so, whether it's professionally or personally.
Well, I'll give you one of my favorite quotes, and it was by Julia Childs. And she said, if food comes to you and it looks beautiful, it's just designed, it's got height, it's got curves, you know somebody's fingers have been all over it.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Yes. Okay. Well, let me jump into the first question then, and I'll let your story unfold as we speak in the next 30 or 60 minutes or whatever time frame that we chat today. And again, I had shared with you that there is no time limit. So I'll jump into the first question. So you created the Blind Kitchen to empower blind and visually impaired individuals to cook independently. What was the catalyst moment that inspired you to start this legacy project?
Well, COVID was actually the catalyst moment. I was the only blind student in culinary school, and I graduated in June of 2019. And then COVID hit, and I had intended only to teach adult or legally blind Oregonians how to cook, and I was loving doing it. But when March came, the world did not know how to deal with COVID. Is it safe to teach in person? Is it safe to, be in the same room? It took about a year and a half for the state of Oregon to figure it out. And during that year and a half, I culinary school is very hard. It's very demanding. It's 6 hours a day. It's you do bread one week and then you're doing salads one week and you're doing it goes at warp speed. And so I didn't really have time. I had to problem solve. How am I going to do this so I can compete with the other students? I need to be able to flip that egg. How am I going to be able to do that attractively and cleanly? And so I solved those problems, and then I just took that time to pull it all together in an organized fashion.
That's wonderful. So let me, for a moment, have you, if you're so would be so kind, to share the backstory because I was curious in our preamble regarding when did you become blind? Were you born blind? And you had shared that you became blind at age 28. So would you say more?
Yeah, so I have retinitis pigmentosa, and I have very little vision in my left eye, and that's mostly just clouds. If the light is just right, I can see movement going past it. It usually scares the heck out of me because I don't expect it, but that's really all I have. So when I was 28, I went into the eye doctor, and this is the way I remember it. It's probably not the way it happened, but he said, "Oh, I see something that looks like you may have an eye disease and you're going to go blind, and I'm going to send you to a specialist." I was like, just give me glasses. I have astigmatism. I don't need nothing about going blind. And then I did go to an ophthalmologist, and indeed, I did have this inherited condition. And there was no history on either side of the family of blindness, but my parents were recessive gene carriers. So there's 1 in 4 chance that the disease would express itself when they conceived children, and I'm one of 12, and 3 of us have this disease. So it was quite the surprise, and I was able to fake my way through it until my early 50s, and that is when the disease, the first signs are a lack of night vision, and then a loss of peripheral vision. You retain your central vision for most of us that have this disease. And I lost the significant portion of my central vision in one eye many years ago, but it was when I was in my 50s that one eye that I was depending on, it 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 lost its central vision. So that is the story of my vision loss.
Yes, thank you for sharing. So when you say that you faked it until age 50, what does that mean?
Oh, it's a good story. So retinitis pigmentosa, also called RP, stands for resistant people because we do retain that central vision where we can still read. You're like looking through a straw, but you can still read, you can still make eye contact with people. And so we can fake it for a long time. I drove longer than I should have until I almost hit a kid. That's another story, but I quit driving then. But I was very clumsy because if you have no peripheral vision, you're going to be knocking things down around you and stuff like that and apologizing to shopping carts because you think they're people that you bumped into. So, yeah, so I didn't even use a cane until my early 50s. Yeah, we can fake it for a long time.
Interesting. Interesting. Thank you for sharing because a lot of times people are curious, but they might not ask. So I'll just be the first courageous one to ask.
It's true. It's true. People are, I think people are just afraid of getting too personal or being, being too curious where it might hurt my feelings or that they might say the wrong thing and I'm going to sue them or whatever. And I think it's good to be cautious,
Mhm.
but you and I had talked ahead of time that I'm comfortable with it, but not every blind person you meet will be comfortable
Yeah.
with it.
Well, thank you. And there's enough litigation in America today about.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good.
Okay, so how has your journey with vision loss shaped your perspective on independence, dignity, and innovation in the kitchen?
You know, those are three different concepts. So I'll start with independence. When I was growing up, again, I was a normal sighted child and young woman and young mother, and I saw around me not only family but friends, relatives, women who did not seem to have independence. They were dependent
Mm,
on people for money, dependent on just they it looked to me like they had very few choices in their own lives. They were following the script they were supposed to follow, whether it's a religious script or a this is what women's roles are script. And so way early in my life, I don't remember the exact moment, but I decided I was going to be independent,
yes, and
period.
I would just like to interrupt you briefly on that point because absolutely, I think women, as we talked about in our preamble, were expected and are still expected to be demure, supportive, and helpful. But I think that's slowly changing. But still, women have been expected to walk softly, keep their opinions to themselves, or they could face a huge amount of wrath, whether that's in the micro or macro. And there are some women that do very well, like J.K. Rowling, but that's few and far between.
Right, right. And she's still judged quite harshly by other people. So that's an excellent point. And I'm from the Midwest, so that I think that geographically and culturally, all of that plays a role into how much we buy into it and how much freedom we have to escape it. But somewhere I've always been hard-headed. So I decided I was going to be independent. I was going to work. I was going to have children. I was going to do it my way. And I think that's when the universe came and said, "Oh, you think you're going to be independent? Let's see how you do without eyesight." And so it had been it had been the flag that I carried that I am independent, I'm independent, even before vision loss, and it got in my way. It got in my way. We need to be interdependent on people. Independence is important, but so are relationships and communication and that. And so I think that very rough exterior that I had uh, claiming my independence was working sometimes for me, but sometimes against me. So I think this was a gift. They say every problem comes with a gift in its hand. And I think that was the gift that vision loss gave me that, I can be interdependent on people and still be successful and still be proud of the woman I am.
Yeah, that's great. So that's the independence piece. What would you like to say about dignity or innovation? Because I would imagine you probably have a few things to say about dignity, but maybe I'm just presuming in my intuition.
No, you are exactly right. Because even coming on to your show, I had to do my own hair and makeup. And
Okay.
there's this whole thing. How am I going to appear to people? And in cooking, I'll tell you how that applies to cooking is, like if I'm going to appear clumsy, knocking things down, spilling things, all of that. If I have low vision and I'm going to get my face really close to that thermometer so I can see the digital display or the mercury or whatever, that's not very dignified if you're bending over with your eyes that close to the food. So definitely there is a part of my mission is to teach people that they can be elegant. That's not normal to be bending over and having your face so close to the food to be able to see what you're doing. That there are different tools and techniques that you can use. And in that example, a talking thermometer. If I can
Mm-hmm.
stand tall, put the thermometer in the food, and there are ways to know that you're in the thickest part of the meat, closest to the bone, which will be the last part to cook, that I can stand elegantly and just push a button and have that information delivered to me, the same information you'd get just by glancing down at the thermometer. So their dignity is huge. And when you can't see, we're such a visual society. So much we are judged on our looks or on our appearance, on the way we dress. So when you present with a white cane, first of all, people tend to forget everything about you. They don't notice you're tall anymore. They don't notice you're blonde anymore. They know you're blind. That is the number one identifier. And so if I can come into this world with good posture and good conversation, good vocabulary, you know, where I try to keep up with different subjects, then that is going to bode well for the blind community. So that's what I think about dignity. I think it's a constant war for people with vision loss, and I think people anywhere.
Well, it's so interesting because you're holding space almost for the blind in that sense, and you
Yeah,
are very aware of that space that you're holding, and you want to do your community good, which I think
it's
is
true.
fantastic.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah, because you're almost saying to a person, if I am the only blind person that you meet, I'm going to tell you that I have got amazing posture and that you care.
Right, right. Because how
Yeah,
you carry yourself communicates more than your words often.
yeah. Well, good on you. Good on you. All right. Can you walk us through a moment when you realized the tools and strategies you developed were truly transforming other people's lives?
Yeah, having been a teacher, and I did teach adults with vision loss, I they had told me in person, "Oh, this is so helpful. I never thought I'd be able to, make a pie again or whatever." But after opening this business, I think the number of emails and testimonials that I get where people say, especially and I'm not going to be ageist or sexist, but it's older women who have age-related vision loss, who are the cooks for their family. That
Mm,
statistic will probably change over time, but because much more men are becoming interested in cooking. But women of a certain generation lose their vision, and they were the ones that did the Hanukkah feast or the Thanksgiving dinner or New Year's soup or whatever. And so they write to me and say, I used to just sit through holidays, very depressed. I lost a piece of myself when I lost my vision, and that was that love for cooking. And because of helpful hints and strategies from people like me, there's other people out there doing this as well. Not the way I'm doing it, but there's still other sources of information to help people with vision loss get back in the kitchen, that they've reclaimed that piece of their identity. And I hear it from their children and their husbands, and that say, Mom was so depressed. We didn't know how to get her out of her depression. And that woman generally is not going to be the one searching the website for how do blind people cook. It's just
mm,
not gonna that's just the ones that the majority of the ones, and I don't want to pigeonhole people, but many of them didn't have those skills to do that. That's not what they were doing when they were raising their children and taking care of them. So yeah, those make me emotional because my mother did not have vision loss, but I can see that she's gone now, but I can see she had Alzheimer's, and I saw as her identity disappeared, and she knew it was disappearing. So I get it with these other people too. When your identity is no longer available to you anymore, how do you reclaim it? And those are the moments when I say, wow, I'm so glad that I got that email. That I'm so glad that the work I'm doing is making a difference.
yeah, that's marvelous. Thank you for sharing that because those individuals almost are, I don't want to say like they're falling through the cracks in society because I don't think it's that per se. And hopefully I'm not fumbling in my words at the moment, but it's so much though that you're speaking to a void that perhaps is getting overlooked. And so how interesting, I was going to make the joke before about when we make plans, God laughs. And
That's
yet
right.
I almost now wonder if God is utilizing you as a vessel to then be able to speak to older women as well as now older men who,
The grillers of the family, the
sure,
guys that
sure.
used to be out on the grill. Yeah, we have a grilling collection just for those people that want to get back out there and grill safely, because
Yeah.
that's part of who they were and are, whether they know
Yeah.
it or not.
And how amazing that you get to be their guide now.
It's pretty powerful. I've got to say it's humbling. That's the right word. It's humbling.
Yeah. So when you do your actions, whether it's with your YouTube channel or any platform, to know that then there's a ripple effect of you being a positive role model.
It's if I am, and I'm going to try and be the very best positive role model I can be, if that is indeed how people are looking at me
Yeah. What I find so amazing is you don't take any of this for granted, which is great.
in terms of,
The opportunity that presents itself to you.
oh, yeah, it's in my face all the time. This is so another thing that you mentioned that sparked a idea in me is that when you have vision loss, whether you're born with vision loss or if you acquire it, later in your journey, it can be very socially isolating. Just getting to
Mm.
places, transportation can be tough. And so a lot of people with vision loss losing that part of their identity. I'm not going to go to a party. I can't make eye contact with people. I don't know where the bathroom is. I don't want people having to fill up my plate for me because I can't be touching food, other people's foods when I'm trying to dish up. It can be
Mm.
very daunting, and the urge to self-isolate can be very strong because it takes a lot of energy to go out in a social situation and travel to an unknown place. So I think the other mission for the Blind Kitchen that I haven't figured out how to make it work yet is to find a way to connect these people that they through Zoom. Zoom's an amazing medium that we can be across the world,
Mm.
and in the same room at the same time, just like you and I are. And so I haven't quite figured out how to do that, but I think there is some nugget there that people will benefit from that social connection around a shared interest, in this case, cooking. Not everybody
Yeah.
likes to cook. Not everybody should cook. But if you do love it, and it's so much fun being in the same room with other people that are cooking for a holiday or, preparing dinner or a dish, that's when stories are shared, history is shared, culture is shared, and then tips and tricks. And so I think that due to the technology that exists in the world today, that there is a way to do that, but I haven't quite figured that one out yet. I'll get back to you on it.
Oh, I think it's just wonderful. And especially because if it's a gathering place to speak about cooking, then it is a place of how do we move forward? How do we move up? Almost like a spiral of energy regarding the creativity of all the voices that could be on that Zoom session, that Zoom call.
Absolutely. And the knowledge that would be there. Every time I do a presentation or a workshop, I learn from people. I learn from people all the time, things that I didn't know. And then I can use my platform to share it with other people. So I just love any kind of gatherings like that where cooking is the topic. I guess that's why it's my passion.
That's wonderful. Legacy often begins with a personal challenge turned into purpose. What legacy do you hope the Blind Kitchen leaves, not just for the blind community, but for the broader culture of inclusion?
So the inclusion is an interesting topic. It can be quite controversial as well. How much does society owe to people that don't feel a part of the mainstream? And vision loss is not immune to that. But I would like the legacy to be, so I could say technology. The use of technology in the kitchen, but I know that would be a waste of my time. I'm doing it as much as I can, the talking thermometers, talking scales, um, different smart speakers, all the different things, but that's going to change so quickly. I think the humbleness and the basicness of most of the tools in the blind kitchen are things like a wooden spoon, a long wooden spoon. Now, of course, my grandmother used it, her grandmother, but I'd never heard about a wooden spoon being especially useful by blind and visually impaired people. And I'll tell you the reasons it is. Number one, it needs to have a long handle. Ours are 17 inches long. So any wooden spoon you have, and the first thing is it can't fall down in the pan underneath the hot liquid. If you've ever made a marinara, have you ever tried to rescue a steel spoon out of the bottom of that? That's no fun. It's
Oh,
dangerous and it's hot. And but if the wooden spoon is long enough, it can't fall down unless you have a really big pan, and most of us don't. So that's one reason. The second reason is if I'm a little bit nervous about touching the pan and I want to orient myself first, that wooden spoon's going to be sticking higher up than the pan. So I can hover above it and not be near the hot metal and then I'll find the spoon like, okay, now I know about where it's at. It's about 6 inches below this. So that's the other reason it's so blind friendly. And but then the other one is we talked about dignity and not wanting to look like a messy cook. And that's kind of hard. When I could see, I was a messier cook. When I was taking the spoon out of the tomato sauce and putting it down on the spoon rest, there would be drips no matter how hard I tried. Now, there's definitely going to be drips if I can't see, unless I don't have to take the spoon out of the pan. And if it's wood, it doesn't conduct heat, so it can just stay in there for most applications. So the simplicity and the timelessness of about 90% of the tools in the blind kitchen, I think, are going to be what allows it to survive the test of time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there is a timelessness to it. And I know also I made a joke in our preamble that how amazing it is because I saw one of the videos on your YouTube channel. And I think you made two eggs with butter. And I made the joke that there are people that have sight and they won't even go into the kitchen to make two eggs with butter. And yet
Exactly.
you have the drive within you and the humility and passion to just want to not only make two eggs in butter for yourself, but then to show other people this is how you can do it, and I'm going to model it so you know that it can be done as proof, as social proof.
Exactly right. And so, but the other thing I had is not just that I had the courage to flip an egg. I have a tool there. I have a silicone egg ring. It's a 4-inch round ring, and that contains the egg in the pan in an attractive form. So it's going to be more attractive than the eggs I used to cook when I could see, because they're going to be forced to conform to that circle. Works for pancakes too. And they're
Mm.
going to rise higher because they're not going to flatten out on the edges like they do when you just pour it onto a griddle or a pan. They always taper off and get flatter at the ends, but not with the egg rings. They just go straight up. It's very cool.
That is wonderful. That's very cool. I'm a big fan of Dr. Stephen Gundry, and he has a cookbook out. And so I do make eggs every morning from his cookbook recipes.
Oh, I'll have to get that one. I'm not familiar with that one.
Oh, yeah. Some people have opinions about Dr. Stephen Gundry, but I think he's pretty good.
I haven't heard of him. I'm definitely going to look him up.
Wonderful, wonderful. In your work, what have you learned about resilience and resourcefulness that others could apply in their own legacy building journeys?
Yeah, when you have vision loss, and even if you don't, there are a lot of things that happen where you don't know how to go forward. And I'll give you an example. When I first started this business, I had partnered up with another woman who made Braille labels. Very competent woman, very smart. She knew how to do the website. She knew how to source products. She was fabulous. But for reasons of her own, she couldn't move forward. So then I was floored. How I don't know anything about websites. Can blind people do websites? Yeah, they do them all the time. I don't know how, and I don't want to learn how. That's not where I want to put my time and energy. So I took a class at the Small Business Administration, and they're the ones that helped me. They said, do what you love to do and pay other people to do the rest. And sometimes that's easier said than done. If I'm an artist or a, but for me, um, I was able to continue to work and have income coming in so that I could start the blind kitchen. And so the small business administrations are the one that hooked me up with my videographer who had taken that same class several years before. My web designer had gone to the SBA. She had taken a class a couple of years before. My marketing person. So I think when you run into a closed door, like how am I going to do a website? You need to network and talk with people because you can't know everything. These people are specialists in their own field. My videographer can't do what my web designer does, and vice versa. So find someone who has a passion for it and is an expert at it and get their ideas as to how you can move forward. It doesn't have to be you doing everything.
Point well taken. Yeah, I think even individuals that aren't visually impaired as an entrepreneur run into those decisions as they grow
Oh
and
my goodness.
expand. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Cooking's easier than running a business. I'm just saying.
Yeah, all the brand new decisions, 360 degrees, like, didn't know I had to think about that, but now I do.
Right, right, right. Exactly right. Well said.
What were some of the biggest obstacles that you faced in launching the Blind Kitchen, and how did you overcome them?
Um, First of all, was getting the team together, and figuring how I was going to pay them. Uh, Probably the biggest obstacle is the internet. It's so inaccessible. So many websites are where I'll go on and I'll be looking for something and then it'll say button, button, button. And I don't know if I'm adding things to the cart or checking out or just button, button, button. I know if I press my space bar, something's going to happen. So, so that was a big challenge. And this is another one of the adversity things. So that was a problem for me. My husband, I love him. He still carries a flip phone. He is no help on the computer with this business, and we're empty nesters now. So I found out from another blind person that there were visual interpretation services. And these are services, there's two big ones, two major ones, and they actually I pay us for one of them. So for my business, I use a paid subscription model. It's called IRA. And I have an app on my phone. I call into them. It's very simple, easy to operate, and they can actually remote into my computer at my request and help me fill out these inaccessible forms. They can see. And now
Mm.
they can see what's happening on my computer, and they're licensed and bonded, so I'm not worried about my financial information. There's only so much in this world I can control. But with this service, they have been absolutely so helpful in me being able to do it. I don't know. I was going to use that sighted woman. She was going to run those parts of the business. But when she was no longer going to be part of it, and I wanted to move forward, and during COVID, all this stuff, I had to figure out another answer. And so by learning about this service, it's like, wow, that's a game changer for me.
I think that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think you're breaking through, in my perspective, what is possible. That not only do you hold yourself with dignity regarding your posture, but also that you are a business owner, small business owner, a female-owned business founder,
I check all the boxes.
right? Right? To show that it is possible. And here is how you are doing it.
True, true. Through my website and my YouTube channel and my other platforms, that's the way to reach people nowadays.
Yeah.
It's a very visual world, and to tell you the truth, all that marketing we do on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, I don't do any of it. I pay people to do it because that's not my passion either. Social media, it's its own specialty area. So I let other people do that for me so that I can do what I want to do and what I'm good at and what is going to be most impactful.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Are there any other obstacles you would like to share regarding
There's one
this?
that's kind of fun.
Okay.
Well, if obstacles can be fun. So this was in culinary school, and it's to this day when I cook, is I'm slower than most cooks. I've got to be very thoughtful about where I put that towel, about where I put that measuring cup down. If I'm going to come back to it and it's 2 inches away, it's gone. It might as well. So in culinary school, um, I was able to memorize the information stuff. I didn't have a problem with that. But when it came to practicals, I was very slow. And first of all, I'm the only one using a cane. And so in a commercial kitchen, the communication skills are strong. They'll say knife, hot pot, corner, door, behind you. That's part of the culture, regardless of vision loss. So that was really good. But when we had to do our practicals, we'd be given just like the cooking shows. You have 1 hour to do an appetizer, two portions of soup, and a protein with a starch.
Hmm.
All communication skills went out the window. Every man for himself. Everybody's running around like crazy trying to get it all done. And I have no hard feelings for that. I was moving as fast as I could, like a turtle would. But it was a dangerous place to be, when people were concentrating on what they were going to do and what they had to do next. So I was not the only student that didn't finish some of the practicals on time. There were other people. So the chefs would say, oh, if you can't finish on time, finish strong. Because it'd be like 5 minutes, students, 5 minutes, you got to be done. And so the panic would grow. But I was the only student that never finished in the time. So, I lost points for that. I definitely lost points for that, but I would have lost more points if it hadn't been seasoned well or presented well. They were teaching us how to be professional cooks, to work in restaurants where where this stuff matters. So time matters as well, don't get me wrong, but I knew but the seasoning and the presentation held a lot more weight, and so it worked out.
Thank you for sharing that story. Because again, if we haven't walked a mile in someone else's shoes, we have no idea what they're thinking about, what they are facing, what they are overcoming, even if it's just micro steps of, okay, presentation matters, and everyone's going fast right now, and yeah, and I'm being a turtle, and okay, how do I make this work? Yeah.
Exactly.
Very cool, very cool. Designing a legacy often means scaling impact. How are you thinking about expanding the Blind Kitchen possibly one day, whether through education, partnerships, or policy advocacy?
So the blind people, most people don't know a blind person. They may know some people with significant vision loss, but most people don't know someone that's completely blind. It's a very, and in fact, I think the statistic is only 15% of legally blind people have no usable vision. So it's a very small. Most of us are somewhere on the spectrum, but legally blind it's a legal term. And so once you reach that criteria, but so it's kind of a small world, a small community. Yeah, I've done all the blind, any kind of social media opportunities and phone calls and presentations and things that I could get to. And my business was starting to not fall off, but just stay. It was growing, 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 and then all of a sudden it was plateauing. And so I thought, I want to do more. And so there are a lot of people out there that don't identify as visually impaired. It might be your grandmother or your grandfather. Oh, grandpa, he just can't see so well anymore. But he's not going to go anywhere near a vision support group or a low vision clinic. That title does not belong to them. They don't identify, and that's their choice. So I've been going on things like grilling shows because we have this grilling collection. So and they are not meant for blind or visually impaired or even disabled audiences. But there are people in that room that may know someone that say, hey, that would be a great gift for grandpa. He would just love that talking thermometer. It would make his day. Or the pie maker collection if it's a person that you know with vision loss that would like to cook. So uh, that is how I'm trying to scale up my business at this point in time. You talk about legislation. I'm very, very passionate about politics and believe in advocacy, but I can only do so much. I have to decide. I only have so much bandwidth, and what what efforts do I put forth that'll make the biggest difference in helping people? Because that's a core value of mine is service to others. So I wish I could do all of those things, but in mine at this point, and it could, if you talk to me tomorrow, it might change, but at this point, it's reaching people with vision loss who want to be able to cook, whether or not they identify as such or not.
Hmm. I think that's amazing.
It is what it is.
Yeah, thank you for speaking into that. And I know one of the things that we also spoke about in our preamble, which became the intention for today's episode, is the question of what if it is permissible to want to leave a legacy? So I think even with what you're speaking about regarding going on to a grilling show and this idea of expanding what's permissible, expanding what's possible, because talking thermometers do make somebody's life easier, especially if their vision is going. And I could make a joke these days with all the blue screens. I think half of the population could be going blind.
I don't know what you mean by blue screens.
Oh, blue screens from the tablets and the MacBooks and the cell
Oh,
phones.
all the
And,
screen time.
oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. And most members of the youth, whether it's Generation Z or
Oh
millennials, they
boy.
spend 10 to 12 hours on their smartphones and their tablets and their MacBooks and all of that.
My two adult sons, they're millennials. They'll be in the same room texting each other. I'm like, really, guys?
Right. That's what I'm
You're gonna
talking about. And so they invented these blue light glasses, but I'm thinking half the population could be going, you know, blind because that blue light is just so not good for
Ah.
human bodies, never mind just the eyes. Okay. Anyways, one of the questions that I didn't write on the list that I sent over to you has to do with core values, but you just spoke to one of them being service to others. One of the things that I say at my coaching and advisory practice is that if there's a metaphor of a chair, then the four legs to the chair are like the values that support your legacy vision. So, what would you say might be your other three core values?
Huh. Good question. Learning, constantly learning, being
Mm,
open to new information. That's a hard question, actually, because it feels like it's so important. Dignity
mm. I
is
thought that would
important.
make the list.
Yeah, yeah. Um, can I have
You
a
can have a
tri-chair?
three-legged chair.
Okay,
Yeah,
a three-legged chair.
I might also add as a kind of to piggyback off of dignity, pride. Like you want your work to be good.
Right, right. That's true. That is true. And I want other people to be proud of their work as well and have the strategies to do that. Yeah.
Very nice, very nice. What advice would you offer to someone with a lived experience or disability who wants to create a mission-driven business?
So I would advise you to network, maybe take a class, make yourself part of a group of people who are interested in the same thing that you are interested in. Educate yourself. There are so many YouTube channel videos. There's so many books and publications and blogs that chances are you aren't alone. And I remember when I was starting the Blind Kitchen and when I was in culinary school, I was looking on the website and there were people with vision loss that were talking about cooking, but there was no comprehensive website where you could go there and say, okay, this is where I can find a lot of the answers, or this is where I can ask questions. And so when you start, keep your mind open as to what the end product could look like and surround yourself with people that support you, that are proud of you, that believe in your mission. When you are lagging and you need a little pep talk, you now have this community around you, whether it's virtual or in person, that can help you to problem solve when those problems like how am I going to fill out this W-9 form so that these people can buy from me don't become insurmountable.
Mm, that's awesome. Thank you for speaking into that. I think some of the times the hardest thing is just the first few steps.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah,
There
it's
is,
true.
I don't know if you ever crossed paths with him, a coach by the name of Tony Robbins.
Oh, I do. That's my maiden
Yeah.
name, by the way, Robbins. But
Oh,
Tony Robbins, yeah, my ex-husband was definitely a huge fan. He was in sales, and so we had I'm dating myself, all the videotapes and all the
yeah, yeah. He had
stuff.
those infomercials in the 90s.
Yeah, that would be the time.
I bring up his name because one of the quotes that he's known for is saying that 51% of success is just showing up. And so when you speak about the first few steps of just networking, it's
Yeah.
somebody taking those first few steps and believing it's possible.
It's true. Sometimes I still get overwhelmed. I've got to get a newsletter out. I've got to write this blog post. I've got to uh, do this Zoom call. There's just so many. I've got to write this recipe. So many things, and I get paralyzed.
Hmm.
All of a sudden, I'm like, so I find myself. I sit at my desk and I find a million excuses to go into the other room, or I find a million excuses to go upstairs and check on this or whatever. And I'm not doing any of the tasks that are on my to-do list. And it's a physical to-do list. It's on my computer. I have it open all the time where I jot notes. And so what I do is I say, okay, you are procrastinating here. You're not getting anything done. An hour's gone by, and have you done anything? And so then I just choose one thing and I do it. And so once I'm finished with that, at least I've accomplished something. I can take it off my to-do list. And so that's an important part of what I'm doing.
That's wonderful. Yes, yeah. What role does community play in your work? And how has building this community contributed to your sense of fulfillment and legacy?
Community is huge in the Blind Kitchen, and I talk about building community with people that are similar to myself or perceive themselves to be similar, uh, like myself. I think of community as a positive thing, as a family, extended family, so to speak, where people can get together, exchange ideas. So the Blind Kitchen has become that conduit for people to be able to do that, where there really was no other system in place before, like the Blind Kitchen is now, and so it plays a big role in providing that connectiveness.
Very nice, very nice. Thank you again for speaking into all these topics. And you had mentioned before that a lot of times people don't know anyone that's blind, and you're the second person I've met.
I'd be curious to know the first woman's name. You spoke of her earlier, and I meant to ask you who it was
Oh,
and why
yeah,
she was on
I'd
your
have to
show.
look it up, and then I'd be happy
Sure.
to share contact information. And I can't pull her name from top of mind, but that's
Of
just
course, you
short
interview a
term
lot of people. I
memory
know.
these days isn't what it used to be like 10 years ago.
Well, well, strap in. The riot doesn't get any better.
Yeah. Well, so it is interesting because, like you had said, a lot of times people are if they don't know anyone, so if this is their first time being exposed to it, like hearing someone who's blind talk, like, oh, I mean, I'm going to put my foot in my mouth right now, but like, oh, there's a real person in there because
Right.
people don't know. And so if
Yeah.
you're holding the space for, yes, I'm blind, but I'm also real. I'm also a real person.
It's true. It's so true. And that's and I don't know a deaf person. So I don't know very much about deafness or
Hmm.
I don't know a wheelchair user. So I'm not going to know much about their experience. But and that's just I'm not going to say I'm trying to think of the word. Not being ignorant. That's the word I'm thinking of. If I don't open myself up, then I'm not going to have knowledge of that. And
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
what
Yeah,
we do in this
absolutely.
world. Yeah.
Yeah, I think right now this is like an opportunity where you're inviting the listeners and the viewers into your world because we don't know your world until you say,
Right.
"Oh, it's like this and this is what I think about and this is what I face and this is what my thoughts and feelings are about how you navigate A, B, and C." But
Mm.
a lot of times if let's say we saw you in a shopping mall or a restaurant, we might not go up to you and want to quote pry.
No, no, exactly, exactly. And
Yeah.
there is a time and a place. And in fact, was interesting. One of my instructors said she was at a party one time and a person came up to her and she says, "Do you mind if I ask you some questions about being blind if we talk about it?"
Mm.
And my instructor said, she's such an elegant woman. She said, yes, you can ask some questions about being blind and we can have a conversation, but that's not all I want to talk about. And I loved that answer. I thought that's perfect. It gives people permission to be curious and put stuff out there, but it also set a limit on how much we're going to go into my life and my blindness. We can cross that line, but let's talk about other things as well because I'm bigger than my blindness.
Well, absolutely. And that was one of the things I picked up regarding your interest in creating future Zoom calls with others. It wasn't that there would be a group of people to come together to talk about blindness. It's a group of people to come together to talk about cooking.
Exactly, exactly
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. So, in other words, just don't see me by my being blind.
Right, right. There's
Yeah.
more to me. There's more to
Yeah.
me.
Before I go on to the next question, there was a gentleman that was just recently on my podcast. He grew up in Los Angeles and he had two parents that were attorneys. And then he was working in computers. I don't remember top of mind what he did with computers. And I think he was about age 30. And he went to a doctor, and the doctor said, "You've got a brain tumor and we're going to have to operate. And oh, by the way, your face might be deformed by the time we're done." And of course, by the time it was done, half his face was frozen. And so obviously he's moved on with his life.
Oh,
But one of
okay.
the things that he had shared with me in that podcast episode together was the children that have come up to him in restaurants and they want to touch his face. And I think to myself, it's
Wow.
because the adults aren't going to come up and do that.
You're right. No, it's true.
They might want to and they might be curious, but they're not going to be the ones.
No, no. And in fact, and you can have it. Or the other thing that happens if you have a physical attribute that is not quote unquote normal, like the
Mhm.
frozen face or carrying a white cane. Um, Kids are often very curious, and the parents are like, "Don't bother them. Don't bother them. Don't bother them."
Yeah.
when it's
Yeah.
a perfect opportunity to say, yeah, I can't see, my eyes don't work. And this cane, the reason I have it, that's because it tells me if I'm going to run into a wall or something. So then there's a chance for this kid. But if the parents call away, they're going to be terrified. Oh, that lady with the cane, there's something wrong. There's something wrong. My parents are protecting me from her. And I, I think it sends a bad message to kids to not,
Yeah.
but it depends on the person. Other
Yeah.
people might be like, keep your kids away from me. Get out of here, kid. But other people might be more open to it. I think it just depends on the person. There is no one blind way to be in this world.
And there's also just such a pure innocence to the children that want to know from a neutral place.
Sure, no
Yeah.
judgment, just curious.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
it's
curiosity
true.
doesn't always kill the cat, as the expression goes. Okay, let's fast forward 50 years from now. What do you hope people will say about the work you did and the impact you made through the Blind Kitchen?
Well, if the blind kitchen still exists in 50 years, which I definitely hope it will, and I'm actually trying to figure out how it goes on. There just aren't that many blind chefs in the world. So how do you keep going? Do I, sell it to a mainstream person? Do I donate it to some .org or something like that? So I'm absolutely thinking of that because I'm no spring chicken. This can't go on forever.
And
But
you've carved out a niche.
yes, yes. And so if it still exists in 50 years, that's going to be its own legacy that it was people found it useful. And I
Mm.
and as we spoke of earlier, I'm trying to keep the tools and techniques as simple as possible, as non-tech as possible, because I use tech all the time. I got the Meta Ray-Ban smart glasses and they use
Mm.
AI and talk in my ear and tell me what's going on. I will always use tech and go with it. But because I know it's going to change, I'm not going to focus on that in the Blind Kitchen videos and things like that at this point in time. I'm going to keep it simple to the tools. And the other thing is so people can afford it. Technology
Mm.
can be very expensive and out of reach for a lot of people with vision loss. So I think the the existence of the Blind Kitchen long after I'm gone will be legacy enough for me.
That's wonderful. I just think it's amazing that you're kicking the soccer ball forward and you're saying to yourself, what is it that I can do to be in service to others? And then you started that snowball, and I just think it's really beautiful to see. Not only is it a positive impact on your life in terms of the ROI, the return on investment, but also now the connection with other people wherever they are around the world.
It's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful.
And I wonder if I can put you on the spot for two more questions before we draw to a close.
Sure.
Yeah. Um, I always ask this question about the hardcover coffee table book, and I wasn't sure if I should ask it in this conversation, but I think I should. If you were to set aside a weekend or two a month for the next year to design a hardcover coffee table book on your legacy, what images, stories, lessons might fill its pages?
Oh, wow. I think family would be the core of it. I'm being one of 12 kids, and all our names begin with D. So there would
Okay.
definitely be family pictures of especially my mother, who I miss very much, was very close to. It would be my children, definitely. They're a big part of my identity. And one son has actually moved to Portland, Oregon to help me with the business. So that's been a really nice addition. He just moved here about a month ago. Um, it would definitely be celebration and food. Uh, it would center around uh, creativity. Education would be part of it. That's been a big part of
Mm.
my identity as well. Uh, yeah, that's a hard question. I like it, but it's a hard one.
Yeah, the reason I ask is because on my mother's side of the family, they didn't write a whole lot of things down. But on my father's side, he's a 12th generation American. And I have a great grandfather. Obviously, he's passed now, but 100 years ago, he did very well during the Great Depression in New England as an insurance broker. And he drove multiple Cadillacs and had multiple homes and a maid and a boat and et cetera, et cetera. And I always wondered, why didn't he write anything down? And a part of it was that he didn't think probably anyone cared to read it or to know. And I think
Wow.
another part of it that I always find interesting in this type of work is people oftentimes think that their answers aren't good enough, and their answers are perfect. Their answers are good enough and what needs to be said and written and shared. And you never know, 100 years from now or 50 years from now, somebody might want to know, like, well, how did you do good in business and what did you come across? And
It's true. It's funny because I find I've read a lot of autobiographies and particularly of women. That's one of my interest areas. And uh, part of one of the commonalities you see is I wasn't important enough. What I did
mm,
wasn't that great. And that's the self-doubts we have too. My story's not that interesting. Sorry, it's just not. But here I am reading these books of these women who thought their story wasn't that interesting. It's very common. So I've been actually asked told I should write a book, that it would add, first of all, another layer of what where people
just
could be confident in me. Yeah,
yeah.
not authenticity, that's not the right word, but make me more
Well, I think
believable. I'm not
well,
sure of the
I
word.
think what you're referring to is credibility, but I think
That's
there's
it.
also, yeah, somebody to be said like there are so many times when you go into someone's living room or office and there's a hardcover coffee table book of an architect or Monet, the artist, and yet all of these people are strangers. And who will be the brave pioneer within the family tree to say, you know what, I'm going to create a hardcover coffee table book, not because I'm an egomaniac, but because I'm just going to pull together some photos and images and stories and lessons of what works so it doesn't get lost as the times change and as society changes.
I agree. And look at 23andMe and all these people are very interested in their own histories. It's a thing that you want to know where you came from,
Mhm.
and so I think any writing that stuff down, ancestry, all of those things where you now can find more than we ever could before about our family history. It's pretty fascinating.
Yes. Okay, before I ask you about your website, if you were to express what you would like your holistic legacy to be in one or two sentences, what would you say?
That Deborah was innovative and creative and solved a problem for a specific group of people. I think that would be it.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Thank you. Let me circle back. Oh, actually, before I circle back, what is a good website if any of the listeners or viewers would like to learn more about yourself or the Blind Kitchen?
Yeah, so it's theblindkitchen.com and it is a store and it is the selling the tools is our bread and butter, but the library is the heart of the Blind Kitchen and there's a whole lot of free information on there about different strategies and specialized knowledge of how to cook with vision loss. So even if you don't have to spend a penny and you can go to that website and find some really good and helpful strategies for people that even if you can, and if I can take time just to give one of the strategies
Please.
is before I start to cook, I run a couple of inches of soapy water, warm soapy water in the sink. And that is because if I am preparing chicken, now let's pretend I don't even have vision loss. So this is what I'm telling people without vision loss. If you're seasoning chicken and you're flipping it and now your fingers are have got the mess on it, now you've got to hit the water control, you've got to touch the faucet, you've got to get the soap bottle or the dispenser, and now you got to go back and disinfect all that. If you have just a couple of inches of soapy water, you can just find your way to the sink using the back of your hands or your forearms if you can't see. If you can see, you can just walk over there and then plunge your fingers, and all of that cleanup goes away. You solve that
Mm,
problem. So a lot of the strategies found in the Blind Kitchen Library will be helpful for other people as well. I mean, that's just a good one. And you've already started cleanup. You could start putting your dirty dishes in there.
yeah, that's brilliant and so practical. So
Hmm.
it's is it www.theblindkitchen.com?
Hmm. That's it.
Wonderful, wonderful. Let me circle back, if I may, to the start of our episode today, which was the intention we set by the question of what if it is permissible to want to leave a legacy. And I think you have spoken into your experience of not only being willing to go on to grilling shows, but also stepping into your own strengths. Because either somebody can step into their weaknesses or they can step into their strengths. And so I thought, you know, how amazing is it that you have shared your story today, but also what you spoke about in the biographies of women throughout history and them feeling like, oh, they couldn't leave a legacy or they couldn't expand the capacity of what is possible for themselves. So I very much appreciated that. And some of the highlights of things that you spoke about was reaching individuals who are older, particularly women, if they would like to cook a Hanukkah feast or a New Year's Eve soup, for instance, that they can still maintain that love for cooking. It doesn't have to disappear, especially if it's a part of their identity as well as something that they utilize to connect with others, whether that is immediate family, extended family, their community, or how they define family today, but also we had spoken about also reaching men who are grillers. So
Hmm.
it
Hmm.
is a an experience, and I think as more baby boomers are coming of age, and
Yes,
not that
yes,
blindness is age dependent, but it
it
is
often is.
sure, and it
Yeah.
is speaking very much to a need that number one, they are not alone, but number two, there are tools out there, and you will be an amazing guide to help them to learn how to even just cook two eggs with butter in the kitchen.
Well, thank you. It's a love language for many of us. That's how we express our love and affection for people we care about.
So thank you very much for your presence today and for being a guest on this platform.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
In closing, I'm Angelina Carlton, the hostess of the Design Your Legacy podcast, as well as the founder of Legacy Planning, a boutique advisory firm based out of Beverly Hills, California, USA, but international in those I get to coach and consult. I hope to dive deep into subjects that can help a person define, develop, and execute their legacy, and continue to scour the landscape for those who can be great resources to every dimension of your legacy. For many listeners, there can never be enough education and preparation in the moot or moat around your castle. Whether you find yourself with new wealth or generational wealth, may the content on this channel be an anchor in any storms ahead. We do our best to provide original content for your intellectual and emotional curiosity. Thank you so much for joining us today. And if you're tuning in on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, etc., please remember to rate and review, share with your family and friends. And if you feel so inclined, send an email to either Deborah or myself and let us know your thoughts and feelings about today's conversation. So thank you so much for joining, and thank you, Deborah, for speaking into your legacy.